life, the law, and liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Sidebar. This week, what's happening in the news? Well, activist judges continue to try and thwart President Trump's agenda. I have a question. Could Bill Maher actually be helping President Trump? And the bigger question that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out is what's going to happen to the Department of Education. This is Sidebar. Every week, you've got to join us. Come here for comments and conversation with the former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and Jorge Araujo, scholar, former chemist, and pharmaceutical researcher and director. And we always thank you so much for joining us every single week when we are on social media, because we want you to join. Yes, because we continue to have a show after the show, and it's great to be there already. But we also want for you to be a part of the show by contributing. There's a place that you can become a sponsor. All you have to do is go to sidebartv.com. Think about contributing to the show, not only by sharing, liking, sending, up notifications to say, okay, the show's going to be on every Saturday morning, but let other people know, and definitely think about contributing to the show.
Karen, I want to thank everybody that watches the promo. They watch the promo, and they not only make a comment, but they also share it to their what's it called? Their
friends?
Their feed, yeah.
Oh,
so we want to thank everybody, not just for making a comment, but sharing it on their feed. And also take the time, if you're watching on Facebook and you're not liking it or following it, do that. Also on YouTube, go to our page and not only like it, share it. It helps the algorithm and it helps us out. And also on Twitter. And if you were not following our Instagram, because they did cancel our previous one. So we started a new account in January. Thank you for those that are following us. But also go to Instagram, follow us, and share it as much as you can.
Thank you, Salo. Hey, this week, usually, like back when Biden was president, remember that guy? March Madness probably would have been the top story. But President Trump signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. And George, you have been talking about this for forever, and I wondered, were you excited? Were you happy? Is this something we should be celebrating, or is this going to be just this long, drawn-out process? Because there are so many questions. What's going to happen to the teachers? What's going to happen to financial aid? What about the students? Lots of questions, but can he just say there's no more Department of Education?
Well, no, he can't. He can't do that. This is a great step in the right direction, and Congress needs to take it up. And there will be a fight, to be sure. And you can tell you can tell a lot about the decision by its detractors and what they're saying. So I think that's the first step. Now, the other thing I would say, Nico, is that this is enormously popular with people. So he picked a great hill to die on, because people are increasingly more supportive of this kind of action. I mean, poll after poll after poll, survey after survey. I went back a number of years, and it's been increasing, particularly post-COVID, and we discussed it last week when Mark was here. Representative Mark LaHood from District 121 here, and brother of our former venerable DA.
Thank you for bringing it, by the way. Everybody loved that.
No, he did a great job.
He did a fantastic job giving us an overview of where both sides are coming from in the argument, but clearly people, and I say clearly universally and across the country without exception, people are very much in support of it. So Trump, I think, picked a good
but it's not new. I mean, Reagan pledged to do this.
Every president says they're going to fix it.
Didn't want it either. So a lot of people said they were going to do it, but they just didn't do it. So this is, most people know this. It was started by President Carter in 1978. And it's really, you have to really, for me, when this issue came up, I wasn't following like George does. George has been yelling about academia for years now with us. But what do they do? Have you thought about that? Because when I was debating, or not even debating, we were having a discussion last week about it. I said, well, what does the Department of Education do? It sets standards.
That budget is huge.
Well, it's a huge budget. Like an $800 million budget just to collect statistics.
So what do they do?
Talk about inefficiency.
Yeah.
$800 million, almost $1 billion and we need statistics. Don't get me wrong. Number one, are they accurate? Number two, what are we going to do with it? Number three, how are we going to fix it if we find statistics that bother us? And what bothers me, because the statistics suck, our kids are not learning. COVID is another animal in and of itself, and how they acted in COVID and what the department was recommending, and the head of the department is trying to change her tune now. She's trying to rewrite history when she's on camera making the advocacy points she was making. But so they distribute money, essentially. And let me be fair, because I really wanted to listen to both sides. And I mean, as a parent, my wife and I have parents of a special needs son. I mean, there's a lot of funding. Now, I understand that only 15% or 13.7% comes from the federal government. It all comes through state government. But how it gets distributed, I mean, I know special needs parents are concerned. Our son is in a charter school because a private school can't handle him. Mm-hmm. Not handle him because he's disruptive. I mean, although he's got sensory, his needs. They don't have the funding. They don't have the training. They don't have the teachers. They just don't have that. And we're blessed to be in a great school that loves him and nurtures him, and you know, they walk with him well. But so that's a concern of people. So you just have to balance it out. But the department has not performed well, right, of education. Is there any objective measure that someone can say that they do?
Well, no, we can't. We spend more per pupil than any other,
with worse results
any
than
other countries, and we are at the bottom. So this is a race to the bottom. And the budget, by the way, as of fiscal year 2024, is $268 billion.
Right, but $800 million of it is to collect statistics. Okay, I mean, why do you need $800 million? I'll do it for cheaper than that.
They can collect statistics all they want, but by virtue, every objective measure, it is abysmal. And this is the point. Every year, more and more and more money, and every year, students are faring more poorly.
But the Department of Education is one example, Karen, of this administrative state that George and I and others have been arguing that has gotten way too big. These unelected bureaucrats that have a lot of power over us and our children and things, and our money, essentially, and I can't be controlled. So yes, I mean, the president can sign that order, but it has to be an act of Congress, and it has to be done. And look, it should be done. Now, we got to be careful, because the overcorrection can suck too. So there needs to be tremendous wisdom and thoughtfulness in how this happens, and think about, you know, kind of pre-think about how things are going to be distributed, and what do they really do, and do they do anything well, and if they do, how do we make sure that maintains, and how does that go through the state? Because the argument I heard, George, and maybe you have more historical context than we do for sure, is the reason why Carter did this in 1978, because there was a concern and a problem with the states handling the educational system and the distribution of monies. What was the reason for the inception, if you know? It's not a quiz, sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
He just doesn't want to answer.
If you go back and you look at the genesis of it, there was a lot of wheeling and dealing and negotiations with teachers' unions. And I think any meaningful discussion about this has to go back to the American Federation of Teachers and the National Educational Association. But both of these unions had enormous influence in Carter's decision 7980. And follow the money. That you can't have.
What was the reasons where they were saying? That makes sense to me.
No, I mean, it's been the same argument every single year, Nico. We don't have enough teachers. Schools are understaffed. Our education quality is suffering because we don't have enough administrators.
Okay, education quality, they can't make that argument now. So let's take that one off the board.
Right.
I'm just trying to. I'm trying to
making that argument.
But I'm trying to meet the other side where they're at, because I really want to. I mean, because if I'm wrong, and I don't claim to be an expert. If my thinking's wrong, I want to be corrected. So I'm trying to meet them. So the quality, they can't make that argument anymore, right? For some time.
There has not been an effective pushback to say what you guys are saying doesn't bear out in the numbers. Okay. So there's more and more teachers that are hired, more and more staff, more and more administrators. But again, the quality of education, our math and reading scores have never been so low. If you go back by any objective measure and you look at it's in the vicinity of 70 to 72% of students across the nation who can't read at an 8th grade level and who can't perform remedial math skills at an 8th grade level. We're talking 70 to 72%. That's unconscionable. And yet the argument is, well, I mean, it's because we don't spend enough money on schools. It's because we don't hire enough people, and so forth and so forth. And no one has pushed back effectively. This literally goes on year after year after year. And so the question becomes, why is that? Why is that? I'm always intrigued by something that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but you keep feeding it. Mm-hmm. Why is that? And so I think we ought to spend a few minutes talking about that, because Trump is going, again, to the root of the issue. And if you look at the people that are pushing back, from Chuck Schumer to Randy Weingarten, who's literally come undone. She's the president of the union.
Yeah.
If you hear what they're saying, now you're getting somewhere. Now you're getting somewhere. This is a fact. And for those of you who are listening, please check me out on this. Overwhelmingly, teachers' dues, overwhelmingly, nearly 100% go to Democrat candidates for political office, and they're funneled through American educational unions. That is a fact of life. You hire more teachers, guess what that translates to? You hire more staff, guess what that translates to? More administrators, guess what that translates to? It translates to more union dues, and the overwhelming majority of those go to fund the Democrat Party.
Well, this might be a simple answer or a simple question, but then why? Why would the unions support Democrat candidates more than Republican? What benefit do they get?
Democrats have a notorious record for funding things that produce nothing but more bloated government.
But how does the teacher, the members, are you going to break?
Yeah, we're going to go to break. But please, I want to hear more about that, because I didn't put that together. Okay, we're going to take a break, but we will be right back. Please get on Facebook or any platform that you can, sidebartv.com. We'll be right back.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Go to sidebartv.com and become a contributor, and also get on a social media platform so that you can stay with us through this show and after the show. So I saw on X that Elon Musk said a pig squeals the loudest right before it gets slaughtered. And that made me think of what you were talking about, George, when all of these people are like, you can't take the Department of Education apart. The same thing is going on with these activists, and I'm saying activist judges because they have to be activist judges in order to do everything they can to go against what Trump puts forth, anything that they're, and these are judges that sometimes aren't even elected judges, right?
Well, no, the federal judges are not elected judges. They're appointed, and they're appointed for life. Now, I don't know if we wanted to, if you finished your point, George, on the schools, on the teachers, education, Department of Education, but these federal judges. So when you get into these quote unquote activist judges, I'm always real careful to label people.
I agree.
Because the other side labels conservatives all the time, and I don't want to play that BS game. And but these are judges. The bottom line is this: you have to understand the way the system is set up. So you have the Injunctive Relief Act. I mean, that is an act that says, okay, it provides procedures to obtain federal injunctions. And so the argument against these judges is, so the people that are trying to stop executive action are forum shopping. I mean, they're just going to any federal judge. Yeah. Maybe not. Yeah. There's venue issues, there's jurisdiction issues that we can talk about later, but they're forum shopping to these judges that may or may not should have the authority or even should be hearing this issue, and then they're following these quote unquote procedures based off the act, and they're obtaining federal injunctions on an executive act. Now, we didn't complain too much when the vaccine mandate was injunctive relief was given for that, or the student loan that kind of stuff. So be careful of the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it, right? So I want to be very objective and fair when I'm making this analysis, but there's an argument that the judge shouldn't have had the authority to stop the executive branch from doing what they were doing. Now, again, I'm going to throw these all out there, and then we can go wherever you guys want to go. But the problem is, we have a judge that's squelching an executive act. But is that okay? Do we want that? Where's the checks and balance? I mean, are we taking busboys and sending them to El Salvador in a prison. I mean, even if they're illegal, then get them deported. Don't send them to an El Salvadorian prison. I mean, I'm just saying, be careful. We have to make sure that we have a very tempered and objective look at how we're criticizing and what we're going to replace this system with. So some of the things that we've talked about in our office is maybe set up a panel of 3 judges, right? To where if you're going to get, have the Injunctive Relief Act amended through Congress, it's got to be an act of Congress where we say, okay, instead of going to one judge, you can forum shop to. I mean, because then look, if one side does it, guess what? Then this side can do it too. So be careful. Do we have a panel of judges? And then there's a presentation, and it can act quickly. And just so you don't kind of hold up an executive any type of presidential administration. So there's a lot of questions, Karen. You kind of opened up a can of worms.
But then you would think, oh, okay, who appointed these judges, and did they do the same thing by appointing those judges so that they could be in favor of, Trump's administration? I get it, but it just seems like circular.
Well, the way you take care of this, either you don't make federal judges appointed for life, because this is the issues you run into. I mean, it really shouldn't matter. I know I'm an idealist. I got it, check. And I really am. I mean, Lady Justice wears a blindfold. It really shouldn't matter. If you're there and she has her foot over the book, and that book is the laws, she should have a command of the laws, and she has the scales in her left hand, she has the sword in her right. All that means something. There's representations, but it means something in our justice system. And it shouldn't matter whether it's a Bush appointment, whether it's an Obama appointment, or Clinton or Biden or Trump appointment, because a judge should be an objective jurist overlooking, playing referee over the laws and the Constitution, not who appointed them to that position. And look, it's for life. It's a powerful, powerful position.
It's a powerful position that I would argue is being grotesquely abused. And if you look at the numbers, just at the numbers, you look at Trump 1, the first Trump administration. I was reading a piece by a guy by the name of Eric Tietzel. He's the CEO of the Center for Renewal of America, I think it's called. And he does analysis, speaking of statistics, he does analysis, and he looks at temporary restraining orders, universal injunctions, which many of them aren't even appealable. And in many of these cases, the administration doesn't even have an opportunity to respond. So he went through the Trump 1, and he said literally 2/3 of all injunctions that were imposed this century were done during the Trump 1 administration. And 92% of them were imposed by Democrat-appointed judges. So I understand what you're saying. Like we certainly like it when it falls on our side, but there's just no comparison. It is an ocean of temporary restraining orders to paralyze the Trump administration. It's clear what's going on, and it's going towards, I would argue, and I would like to see what viewers are thinking about this, and listeners, and of course I need to hear what you're thinking. I wish almost Patrick was here today, because I'd like to ask him.
Yeah, Patrick would be great.
Because the argument here is that these are going really to core Article 2 powers. This is the issue. It's literally paralyzing the president from taking control of the executive branch, which was what he was elected to do, and to run the executive branch. And so you have judges that are inserting themselves really in cabinetry and in the presidential position, and then they're micromanaging his operations. The idea that this guy would require these flights to be turned around midair to come back, where the hell does he get that kind of authority?
Yeah, well,
Great question.
But there's an argument. It is a great question. There's an argument that the Trump administration should not be relying on the Aliens Enemies Act or the State's Secret Doctrine Act.
Why?
Because why not? Why give that away? I mean, number one, you have more opportunities to contest it. Number two, just stay within the Article 2 powers. Just say, look, I have the authority to do this. You don't have the authority to stop me. Stay there. Why go into? You definitely. I think you have to be very cautious. Kind of drifting into the state secret doctrine.
I see what you're saying.
Because then guess what? We always, there's a saying amongst trial lawyers, whether you're a prosecutor or a defense lawyer, be careful on your appeals because you may create bad law. You have to be very careful. So the state secret doctrine that now they're kind of falling back on. It's like stay in Article.
Them a reason
stay in Article 2 first. Let's stay within the Article 2. Yeah. If there's an issue, then have a backup argument maybe, and maybe that's for the bean counters like Patrick in our office and all the brainiacs to make that argument. But there's an argument to that. Look, if you say that, look, you don't have the authority to stop me. I'm well within my confines and my authority to do this. Then stay there and let the courts, make a ruling on that. But you're right, George. Those statistics should be alarming to people unless you're left leaning. I get it. 2/3, I didn't know that, of all injunctions are against Trump's orders, and 92% done by Democrat appointees. Look, it shouldn't be that way. But still, that's how it is now. All I'm saying is, if you stand on an idea or a principle, it doesn't matter who's in office. That's my point. So right now, yes, it's being used against conservatives. It could easily switch switch roles, and that's why Democrats need to be careful about this. They're cheering it on until it's against them. Just like the whole domestic terrorist argument. So parents were domestic terrorists in school board meetings, but nobody's domestic terrorists when they're bombing,
a Tesla right.
shop or Tesla drivers and owners. So again, that I call BS on that. That's hypocrisy. That's do as I say, not as I do. And I think the vast majority of people don't respect that, but it's dangerous. That's all I'm saying. It's dangerous.
But I guess I want to get back to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It is established law, and Trump invoked it because they've declared Tren de Aragua and MS-13 foreign terrorist organizations. Drug trafficking, police shootings, sex trafficking. It wasn't long ago they were in Aurora, Colorado in that apartment complex, remember? They're openly carrying assault weapons, terrorizing people, and nothing was done about it. In the first month of the Trump administration, ICE finally conducted a raid. And it would have been more successful if there wasn't a leak.
Do you want a judicial finding of that? I understand they're doing violent behavior. Then every gang is a terrorist act organization. And all I'm saying is, without some type of process, could another administration deem the Catholic Church a terrorist organization? Who knows? I mean, you got people in Britain being prosecuted for holding British flags up. I mean, Britain's screwed. I mean, forget it. That's another show in itself. But it shows where we could go if we don't control these ideas and gird us back to a foundation that our Constitution. I mean, I'm asking the question, Georgia.
Sure. I think we should go to you brought it up, and I think it's important that we bring it up. The Alien Enemies Act is very specific for specific circumstances,
exactly, right?
So it allows a president to deport non-citizens during wartime, and this is where the flack came. Well, I think we even heard Stephen Miller going back and forth with CNN on this. I think he did a great job truly schooling the interviewer. He says, look, we're not in an official state of war with Venezuela, but
right.
Tren de Aragua has been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. And the Supreme Court, and this is important, has ruled that deportations under the act are not subject to judicial review. This is settled law. So Trump is rightfully saying, who the hell are you to contest what's already been contested? It's already been through the courts, and it is entirely inside the jurisdiction of the executive branch. And so I think under these circumstances.
What happens, I'm just giving you a hypothetical because this is like a law school exam. What happens if the Christian church is deemed a terror organization?
Okay, these are not specific. I'm going to the Alien Enemies Act because I want to be specific. I want to make sure that I'm not missing something. The Alien Enemies Act specifically allows a president to deport non-citizens.
Got it.
So it is very specific, and it is very carved. And so I get the concern. I'm always concerned about that. You're right. I mean, at some point, Trump won't be in office. At some point, you won't have a Republican president.
Yeah.
You have a Democrat president. If you have a lunatic who auto-pens things. Sorry to bring up that topic.
Yeah.
That's another issue.
Who auto-pens policy, right? And you've got your neighbor being deported. And that's like, he's from Iowa. He's not a non-citizen. So I get the concern, but the Alien Enemies Act is particular. And that's why I thought it was a brilliant move. And it's already been litigated, and the Supreme Court has already weighed in.
But I think the question is, what's the definition of wartime? And then you said Stephen Miller talked about that. But again, just think about that. Invasions, so it's an existing law, so I have no issue with it being applied. It's just that whether it's applicable or not, and the courts will let us know whether it applies in this situation.
So what you were saying, Nico, is you agree with this law, but you're saying, why did you even have to bring up the law?
Yeah, I agree with taking these folks out of this country.
Right.
I mean, look, and everybody thinks like, I'll bring them back until they do something to your family member. Yeah. I see this stuff every single day. I've had my brother taken from me, not by a gang. Well, I guess they were former gang members, but this is very personal. So I get it. I'm just saying we have to set up we have to preserve due process, fundamental fair play. Because all I'm saying is the other side doesn't need a lot of, they don't need any help misusing laws against people that they don't like. And so, I mean, just look at the guy that was prosecuted for praying across the abortion clinic. I mean, thank God for a jury of his peers. But if we weren't a system of the people, by the people, for the people, that dude would be in prison. He'd be in prison. I mean, and he'd have to be pardoned by Trump. But if Trump didn't win, forget about it. So all I'm saying is I'm very militant about setting up a process that if we're okay with, it has to be applied to us. Because I criticize the left for the hypocrisy, I want to make sure that we don't fall in the same.
So in other words, why give them a reason to throw it out?
You asked me a separate question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, all I'm saying is why bring up the state secret doctrine or the Aliens Enemies Act? I mean, he wanted to act immediately. I understand that he was being creative. I'm just saying you're running the risk of judicial review and getting bad law brought down.
And that's the rub right here. It should. It's an excellent point. But the point is, the whole act has been litigated, and it's outside
You're
of
saying there's
judicial
precedent
review.
already.
That's the precedent has been set, and this is what they've explicitly ruled. And please, somebody, we've got plenty of people listening. Check me out, see if I'm wrong. They've explicitly ruled that removal orders under this act are not subject to judicial review. We've already run the gamut here. So he's basically pushing back on Boasberg and saying, look, you don't have the authority. You're basically a rogue federal judge. You're overreaching here. You don't even have jurisdiction.
Okay.
And so it's a chicken or the egg issue. I get what you're saying.
Did they confirm that they're all non-citizens?
Indeed.
Okay, well, as long as there's a process to doing that. Look, I don't want anybody taking Salo away from us. And that's what we're going to do. And everybody's going to be bitching about it because Salo's gone.
Why use him as the butt of all the jokes?
What?
Salo.
Hey, listen, we are going to take a break. That's so bad. People are making comments. They're just saying, like, over all of this, who is the person that's fighting to keep illegal gang member terrorists here anyway? We are going to take a break. Remember, get on the social media platform of your choice and get there now because we're going to continue the show afterwards. We love your comments. Ernest, Carlos, Vinny, everybody that's joined in this morning, we love you. We'll be right back.
San Antonio's news, weather, traffic, plus breaking news 24/7. This is News Radio 1200 WOAI from the GiveMeTheVin.com Sell Us Your Cars studio.
Good morning, I'm Eric Lycum on News Radio 1200 WOAI. A big prostitution sting in Houston nets 20 arrests. Details coming up. First, traffic and weather together.
The WOAI Traffic Center.
Over on Highway 151 westbound Ingram Road, we have an accident that's been cleared out. Over on Loop 1604 westbound, off-ramp to Calcil Parkway is closed due to some construction. I'm Alexis, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
Clouds and sun in 83 this afternoon. We've got 62 now. The WOAI 24-hour weather center, our top story. 2 operations in the Houston area lead to the arrest of 20 people in the latest crackdown on human trafficking and prostitution.
Female deputies went undercover walking the streets to arrest those attempting to buy sex. Constable Mark Herman says the sting targeted areas known for frequent prostitution complaints.
Many of these places where we set up were around schools, churches, and our communities that we serve.
The 20 male suspects ranging in age from their late teens to early 50s. Meanwhile, in Northeast Houston, a joint operation by the TABC, FBI, Homeland Security, and District Attorney's Office uncovered allegations of human trafficking and prostitution at a sports bar.
Fox 26 Houston's Jade Fleury reporting. The Las Vegas Sands Corporation offering a revised proposal for a development in Irving. The original plans before City Council included a destination resort that would have included a casino should gambling be approved in Texas. The company has now removed that proposal, which has been advanced to the City Council. A driver who was injured in an 18 vehicle crash in Austin that killed 5 and injured 11 has filed a $100 million lawsuit targeting Amazon, a trucking company, and the driver who police say caused the crash. News on demand at WOAI.com. Our next update, top of the hour, breaking information as it happens. I'm Eric Lycum on San Antonio's news, weather, and traffic station, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
This report is sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation. Texas roads are big enough to share. Drivers, do your part to help make sure everyone arrives home safely. Stay alert, stop for pedestrians at crosswalks, yield while turning, and watch your speed. Be safe. Drive smart. A message from TxDOT.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. Go to sidebartv.com. Please consider contributing to the show so we can continue to have these conversations. So Caroline Leavitt was the one that originally said, called on the Supreme Court to act against these federal judges who have been blocking, Trump's executive orders. And so now we're hearing from Supreme Court justices, and do they even have a place in all of this?
No, I mean, Nico, let's just read a statement. Roberts weighed in on this.
I didn't hear what he said.
So Trump does a post on Truth Social, and other members of the administration, including some members of Congress, that we've got a problem with judges here who are going after core Article 2 powers. Trump has a right as the chief executive of the United States, as the president, the leader of the executive branch, to manage, to use the executive branch in ways that advance core powers. This is a national security act. They're labeled a foreign terrorist organization. He's conducting a national security operation, and he is extracting people from the country who are known domestic terrorists. These are and in the previous administration, they knew that they, again, drug trafficking, killing police officers, sex trafficking, this is established. So Trump is conducting a national security operation. And so he posts on Truth Social after Boasberg weighed in, like we just talked about, and said, this is a rogue judge move. This guy should be impeached. And he's one of many voices on this. Roberts weighs in. Quote, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. End of quote. Now that sounds really nice on its surface, except that it's not true. The impeachment process actually is a political tool that falls entirely within the purview and the auspices of the legislative branch. For him to use the word inappropriate is rich. It's completely appropriate if the legislative branch, in fact, chooses to take it up, if they deem it appropriate. And it doesn't just have to be because of high crimes and misdemeanors, but it can be just because of crappy behavior. I almost used the other word
Thank you.
on air.
Don't.
But it could be because of bad behavior, if there's cause for bad behavior. And of course, that has to be established. Now, that's entirely within the purview of the citizen of the United States, taken up by the legislative branch. For him to step in and say this is inappropriate, that's pretty rich. What is inappropriate is that you have, as we just said, injunction after injunction after injunction after injunction. I think, Nico, and this, please check me out on this, just in the month of February alone, there have been more injunctions against this presidency than there were in all of Biden's 3 years. And so I think it's a legitimate concern that's at play here. For him to step in and say, this is inappropriate, there's nothing inappropriate about it. You might not like it, but it's not inappropriate.
I'm not a Roberts fan, but I can see why he said that. I mean, look, I think we need to look at whether federal judges should be lifetime appointments, to include the Supreme Court, to be honest with you. I mean, look, and that could go both ways.
Wow.
But well, think about that. I mean, this is where because it becomes partisan. It's too partisan for me. I mean, how many times have we had 9-0 rulings? Very few times. There was a couple of this last year, and I was pleased to see it. Or 8-1 rulings or whatever it is. You don't see that often. They usually vote per party line per issue in the party. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when the process has been infiltrated by the tribalism of politics or whatever, the party system. And that's the problem. I think he's saying, be careful what you ask for. Because now, do we try to impeach every conservative, quote-unquote, judge when they do a bad ruling for you? This is a crappy ruling. I got it. But there needs to be a better process in place. Now, do you say, hey, these are like magistrates, federal magistrates are appointed for 20 years or whatever it is. It's a number. It's not a lifetime appointment. And they have to get, that's a hell of an appointment, don't get me wrong. But do you make it 12 years? Do you have the opportunity to sit through 2 different administrations, but then you can see the cycle rotate? Is it a 12-year appointment with the opportunity for a reappointment, but you have to go through this is just me. I've thought about this over the years because we keep running into this problem.
Keep a check on things.
We got to get, I mean, when you have a lifetime appointment, think about that. That is insane. So, I mean, a federal judge and a Supreme Court judge, these are extremely powerful positions. Think of a lifetime appointment as a district attorney, a lifetime appointment as a president, a lifetime appointment as anything. Now, I have not looked at the history on this, and George can maybe, he's our resident scholar here, but was this the intent of our founding fathers to have this the only area where there's lifetime appointments? I have an issue with that. Now, I like it when it's Thomas or Scalia or, you know, whatever, Alito, got it, but I have to be fair. I have to think about the process and moving forward. I have an issue with lifetime appointments.
As you're bringing this up, I'm embarrassed to admit I bought a book that I strongly recommend. I only read about a third of it, and then I stopped, and I shouldn't have. Mike Lee put out what I think is a defining book on this. It's called Saving Nine, and it talks about the history of the Supreme Court, and it addresses the issues that you're talking about, the life appointments, and some of the recent attacks to pack the court. Just sort of put in a judge that will see things the way you want to see it. So much for constitutional law. So anyway, I really would highly recommend the book. It reads very easily. I think he's a brilliant writer and an asset to the United States Senate. But I need to go back. I'll read that book this afternoon because I really want to. Of course, I want to make sure that it's something I need to shore up on. But that's an important question.
Your sister's laughing because I said, of course you will, and then you will. In about an hour.
You just reminded me that I bought the book and then I didn't finish it, but I think that's the book to read. Saving Nine by Senator Mike Lee. Let me.
Does he support lifetime appointments?
I believe he does.
Really?
But
Interesting.
I believe he does, and he provides some strong rationale for it. Like I said, as you're talking, I realized I never got that far.
You never finished it, damn.
No.
Okay.
So I need to do that. But I want to share something that Robert said at his 2000. It's 20 years this year, by the way, since his Senate confirmation hearing this year. And here's what he said. And he invoked, of course, America's favorite pastime to drive home what he thought was an important point. I think it was an important point, although I would argue he hasn't lived by it. Quote, judges are like umpires. Yeah. Umpires don't make the rules. They apply them. The role of an umpire and a judge is critical. They make sure everybody plays by the rules. But it is a limited role. Nobody ever went to a ball game to see the umpire.
It's a great statement.
And this is the guy, and I think two of the decisions, and I have a list. I'm sure everybody has their Roberts list. I've got my own list. But there's two decisions on there that drove me absolutely insane, where I thought to myself, Roberts did exactly the opposite of what he said he would not do and what he would not support any other judge doing. And that is to actually get into statutory rulemaking. If you remember the Obamacare in 2012,
rewriting of it,
when the United States Supreme Court made Obamacare a thing in 2012, and by all reports, he was totally against it, and the heat was intense, and so it was going to be a turn down on the grounds it was a violation of the Commerce Clause or whatever it was at the time, and he actually ended up inserting himself in the statute and rewrote the statute to make it a tax because, after all, government has taxing power. So he saves Obamacare by basically rewriting the statute, and that is not an overstatement.
But that's what federal judges do every day, and
but from the United States Supreme Court,
I get it, but what I'm saying, you can be in the middle of a trial, and look, it's not that they're doing anything wrong. This is just allowed. It's been accepted. I mean, you can be cross-examining a witness. A judge can clear it up, can actually do the redirect. And it's always applied to the government, unfortunately.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but so you just can ask questions from the bench. I mean, even during a jury trial, not during a hearing. During a hearing, I get it. I mean, in state court, they do the same thing. But I mean, all I'm saying is it's just something to think about. That's all. I'd like to hear what Mike Lee says about it. I mean, look, we're blessed. We have good federal judges in our area. But I'm just saying that's the norm. I mean, they conduct voir dire, meaning jury selection. There's a lot that's done, and the federal system is very different than state systems, than the state courts.
So when that happened, I was skeptical that this was a sign of more things to come. Now, in 2019, I want to throw this out to you and see if you remember it, and I just want to see how you react to
All right.
Leading the witness.
What the hell happened
in 2019, there's a census citizenship question that comes before the court. If you might remember, the Trump administration was conducting a census, which is normal government operation. And there was a question on the census that said, are you an American citizen? It seems like a pretty straightforward question, a legitimate thing to ask during a census. This was escalated up through the court because it was argued that it was unconstitutional. And so it comes before the court, and it's obvious, if you're listening to him, that he thinks it's completely constitutional. And you think
Roberts?
Yes.
Okay.
And you think he's going to go for it. In the end, he votes against it. Rationale?
What?
He questioned the disingenuous, or he questioned the legitimacy, the authenticity of the Trump administration. In other words, he was questioning the Trump administration on disingenuous grounds. In other words, you're asking for this question to be on the census form because there's some ulterior motive. And because of that, he ruled against it. And I thought to myself, I didn't realize it was the job of a judge to be analyzing the moral condition of the human heart. And yet, if you read the ruling, that's exactly how it's stated, that the Trump administration's motives were somehow contrived. He's not ruling on the merit of the law, on its constitutionality. He's talking about whether the motives of the Trump administration are in fact okay by his standard, and in the end came down against them. And I thought to myself, so much for not being an umpire, or so much for being an impartial umpire. And after that, in 2019, I thought to myself, oh my, this is going to be a really rocky road. And in fact, it has been. It seems like Roberts only inserts himself to talk about appropriateness when it's Trump. Because there were a lot of opportunities when Biden was blowing off court orders.
Then you're going to disagree with Mike Lee about lifetime appointments.
Let's see what happens.
I mean, you understand? That's my point.
I can see your point.
So my point is, so Roberts came in with this ideology, and he was kind of an idealist, and I love that statement. I always use the example of a referee or an umpire also.
I
didn't know Roberts said that, so maybe I heard him say it. I don't know, or just we think alike. But my point is, I agree with that. It shouldn't be about the judge. It's about the law and the facts. And then it's not even about the advocates. The advocates just present the law and the facts and argue them the way they do and try to be persuasive about it. But when it's about the judge, it's wrong. And I agree with his statement. And I see your point about how he's ruled over the years. And you have to ask yourself why. I don't know why. I know people have argued he's compromised. Well, you have no evidence of that. I think you need to be very careful. I think we
need to be very slow.
Very slow when you go that route. But is he persuaded? Amy Comey Barrett. I mean, some of her rulings have been off the wall. I mean, it's interesting. Now, if she genuinely disagrees, then that's fine. I'd like to hear the rationale. I mean, she gives the rationale, but whatever. So all I'm saying is this is the arguments for not a lifetime appointment. That's all. And I think that a 12-year, maybe a 15-year, 20 seems like it's a career, but still, it's better than lifetime.
We have to take a break right now, but we will come back with our last segment in just a minute. This is Sidebar.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring invaluable practical knowledge from the other side of the aisle, using over 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome.
I'm Nico LaHood with LaHood Norton Law Group. Have you been arrested or accused of a crime? The LaHood Norton Law Group has the knowledge to defend you regardless of how small or large your case. In Bexar County, anywhere in the state, or even nationwide, we have the knowledge to defend you in federal or state court, no matter how small or large your case. We are trial lawyers with proven success.
Using their 70 years of combined experience to strategically advocate for their clients' rights and pursue the best possible outcome. The LaHood Norton Law Group. For a free consultation, call today, 210-797-7700. 210-797-7700. LaHoodNorton.com.
This is Nico LaHood. If you or a loved one has been arrested or accused of a crime, we can help.
LaHoodNorton.com.
1200 WOAI. This is our last segment here on the radio on WOAI. So get on a social media platform so that you can join us after the show as we continue the conversation. George, I have a question. So all of these judges that are coming forward saying you can't do this, you can't do that to President Trump, I mean, where will it go eventually? I mean, is it possible that they're going to stop him and make them take that plane back from El Salvador here?
I'm going to answer by bumping to Nico for a little for a bow on this. It seems to me that a lot of these truly don't have merit. I mean, there's a legitimate question whether there's even standing, because that seemed to be an issue. Yeah. So getting past this, it's my view that I think in the end the Trump administration is going to be successful. In fact, they already have been with a number of them. When on further judicial review, it doesn't even have to get to the United States Supreme Court. Even the appeals courts have sided on the side of Trump. But that's not the point, is it? Politically, what this is doing is basically paralyzing the Trump administration. It'll gum them up in the appellate process so that they really can't move in earnest on their agenda. I think politically that's what's going on. I mean, we're talking about over 100 lawsuits here. I mean, it's out of control.
This is why it takes legislation to have an expedited process. I mean, because if you know that this is a political move and a tactic, then you need to have forethought to say, okay, well, is there an expedited process? Now, once that process has been taken to its end result, well, then you're stuck with what you're stuck with. And then, I want to set up a system, an objective system that can play out, and that we don't get into this habit of changing laws for our benefit. I want to change laws to make the system better objectively, and if it plays out, it plays out. It goes off my side, then guess what? I got to work better and harder to get people in office and people in positions that are going to follow the Constitution.
But not to further the agenda of a political party, per se.
If we get into this back and forth of change the law to do this and change the law to do that, where does it end? It's like it's a stacking the packing the court situation. They just want to pack the court. And no, I'm curious to hear what Mike Lee says about lifetime appointments. I have not been for life. I don't think anyone should be serving lifetime. That's it. Just your family. Serve God lifetime and serve your family lifetime, and that's it. Everything else, it's got to be merit based.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Elected.
I'll knock it out this afternoon.
Okay, text me. Give me a report. I want to report.
All over it like a
book report.
Okay, so did you read that? I'm taking this in another direction just as we close up here, but Kid Rock is going to organize a meeting between Bill Maher and President Trump because he wants peace, and he believes that the biggest critic, Bill Maher, of Trump should meet with Trump and maybe...
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it'd be great.
And so that's going to happen. But Bill Maher has been tearing into President Trump about the economy, and everybody's
he tears into Trump. He tears into the left. To be fair, look, we can't like Bill Maher when he just tears into the left. Look, I think he does have Trump derangement syndrome to an extent.
He says he doesn't, but it's funny because
ask an alcoholic if they have a problem too. All I'm saying is, I think it'd be a good look. I like Bill Maher. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I like him. I like his style.
He's intelligent.
He's
very
intelligent.
Good ideas.
He's just skewed. I mean, I think you saw that with that interview with that. What's that lady's name? You said Sanjur?
Batya Ungasargan.
Whatever.
That's why you didn't remember her name.
She's phenomenal. I think she's great.
She's a MAGA lefty, she says. Or something
I know.
like that.
That was amazing, though.
I've been reading her stuff on Newsweek for a long time, and I've seen...
What? Can you post that clip on the feed just so people can see it?
I've been seeing her slow conversion, and she is a very effective Trump economics apologist, I think. And so
Well, give people the background. So Bill Maher had her on. She was on Bill Maher, and Bill Maher tried to set her up. He's like, well, I guess you're regretting voting for this guy. And she goes, oh, no. And she goes, of course. And then it goes into this explanation, right? And then the crowd laughs. And then she goes into this explanation why she supports what Trump is doing with tariffs. And it is a good apologetic in defense for tariffs. Now, the only thing I wish she would have addressed, she didn't address the consumer. She didn't address, because someone has to pay for this. In the end, it's going to be the consumer. Your house is going to be more expensive, your car, your groceries. She's right about saving industry. She's right about saving money, bringing it back home and saving jobs here. And the reason why foreign countries can compete is because there's slave labor over there, and American countries and manufacturers can't compete with that. And so you're bringing it back home, and it's even playing field.
I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you.
Wish you would have
that would have been
that.
a very easy answer.
Okay, what would she have said?
We have 4 years of Trump 1.0, and this exact same thing were done, and the same arguments were trotted out. And what we have found, and this is legit, is that there's actually zero correlation between Trump's tariffs in Trump 1.0 and inflationary activity. You got the initial adjustment because you're changing the rules, if you will, because the fatted calf is now over.
But does it go back? Does it ever go back?
In fact, most of those costs are actually absorbed by the nation in question. The nation's manufacturers in question.
If it costs more to bring a good into this country, or it costs more to make it here, if it costs more to make it here, how is the other country going to absorb that?
There's the initial adjustment, which the consumer feels. Okay. But then the tariffs don't happen in a vacuum. Right. So what you're doing is you're obviously, and this is her argument, you're de-incentivizing.
I got that.
Right. And so but that translates to dollars and cents.
I know.
Trump just, since his inauguration in January of this year, he's been able to repatriate about $2.1 trillion into the American economy. Right? So that's jobs that are created. That's more earning power.
People explain what that means. Not everybody understands that. So you're saying because people are going to invest in the country, they're going to bring jobs back, they're going to bring manufacturing back.
Happening. Okay. And so this happened in Trump 1.0. Okay. So yes, you're right. On paper, that's how it works. Right. But all of that is easily assuaged by the offset.
What's the offset?
The offset is that you're building American manufacturing power. And so wages are going up. People are actually
hold on. So then it doesn't offset the cost, and you're just saying people have more money to pay for it.
Well, that's an offset.
Okay, well, I'm talking about actual costs because not everybody gets the benefit of working for a manufacturing company. So
I was talking to the bottom line of inflation because that's the argument.
Outweighs the pain, but there is a legitimate argument. It is what it is that products are going to cost more, and that theoretically, if you have more money, but that doesn't apply to all 330 million people here. I mean, if you have more money, then it doesn't hurt you as much.
No, that's correct.
Okay,
and that's exactly. And now 2.1. And this is. I don't understand why nobody talks about this. 2.1 trillion and counting. And this is setting aside the $1 trillion that are anticipated in year one of Doge cost cutting. I mean, setting aside, taking that money out of the system, that fake money that was printed out of the system. You're $2.1 trillion in companies that are now saying, "Hey, man, there's no point in me manufacturing overseas, right? Because now I'm going to get tariffed to death, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to build here." There's an incentives here. There's tax structures that benefit me here. And now the market's here. I mean, why send stuff through the Panama Canal? I'm making it here. I'm selling it here. The world's richest market right here in my backyard. Trump is making those arguments. I'm telling you, we're at what? Month 3 since he's been in office? 2.1 trillion and counting? Do the math, people. So I think that's the basic argument. But I think Maher, I think she did a great job for saying.
She did.
Why in the world would we incentivize a lopsided system?
Yeah, it's like a race to the bottom, she argued. And everything was, she did a great job defending it. All I'm saying is, the concern is, if Trump's administration goes off the rails, it's going to be over this issue, don't you think? Yeah. Because this is where people they're not bought in yet.
And it will absolutely not happen. I guarantee you it won't happen.
To God's ears.
Because we're seeing what's happening right now. This is in the first month. Inflation's already down. Go ahead.
But I guess I saw that, and eggs are down too. By the way, I got that. But what I'm saying is,
somebody who doesn't eat eggs.
Yeah, I don't eat eggs. Exactly. But what I'm saying,
I know a doctor.
But what I'm saying though. What the hell was I going to say now?
You're getting back to this idea of there are additional costs initially.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
But you said it was an apologetic.
I don't know. But I don't know what I was going to say. You guys are distracting me. But all I'm saying is it doesn't change now. I guess for the now, people, it still costs more for people to live, to buy groceries. And how does that help them? I mean, people aren't on board with it yet.
Okay, so right now, how much money have we taken out of the system? I mean, if Doge is to be believed, and you guys should go to doge.gov, they actually keep a tally every single day. I always recommend, if Democrats, the people who hate Doge are the people who don't know anything about Doge. Go and check it out.
Yeah.
But the people that hate tariffs also are the people that don't know anything about tariffs, and that's why they're so afraid of them.
Well, Nico brought this up, and I wish you would have continued talking about this 2 weeks ago when you brought up the fact that prior to 1913, it was a tariff-based system.
Yep.
We did just fine.
That's right.
We did just fine before the income tax.
But let me tell you why, because nobody was taxed back then. See, so if Trump did that, and went tariffs, then the tax goes to the other countries, and then there's no income tax here.
I have goosebumps just thinking about it.
Republicans would stay in power perpetually. Forget about it. But and the people that hate Doge, by the way, I didn't want to cut you off, are the people that loved Obama's campaign to cut waste in 2011. Yeah. The hypocrisy's off the charts. So we talked about it last week. Obama in 2011 had a campaign to cut waste. What does that sound like? Doge, Department of Governmental Efficiency. So I'll keep going.
No, I mean, George. I think you got to look at an international tax or a foreign tax the same way you look as a domestic tax. I mean, an income tax it's a tax, and the tariff is, yes, it's also a tax. So the same concept applies, which is why Trump is actually arguing for the abolition of the income tax. And it makes sense. Right now we collect about $2.4 trillion in income tax. There's other taxes, payroll and excise taxes, but specifically in income tax, it's about $2.4 trillion.
But if we didn't operate at a deficit, if we were efficient and didn't, we operated at a $2 trillion deficit essentially.
I think we could make up those $2.4 trillion without much difficulty. Because right now, if you add up all, including China and Mexico and all the other European hacks who have been living off the what of the United States, if you add all of that up, I think it tabulates to about $900 billion to $1 trillion in tariffs.
That leaves about
1.4 trillion bucks. Doge is promising $1 trillion in savings. That's $1 trillion right there. That leaves about 400.
He wouldn't even have to abolish it if he just reduced it like to 10% or something.
Crazy.
I mean, the numbers make sense.
Math.
Yeah, exactly. The numbers make sense.
The numbers make sense, and so I think it's worth the pursuit.
But you can't pay $800 million to collect statistics to get there. I mean, to the department.
You can.
Well, you can, but you and pay $80 million to rent a building with no one in it. I mean, these are the type of thing that Doges are finding.
Across the country,
Or $40 million
People don't
going
believe
for
it, though. There are
transgender studies in rats.
But there are
I mean,
still people that
stupid.
don't believe that that's
Well, I
real
mean-
and that it's like, I have to say that when I go to Doge and read some of the things, I'm like, no, is this a joke? Really?
Look, I mean, Elon, look, I know we're wrapping up in a little while, but and we can talk about this on the after show. I mean, you have to think about Elon he must have made a decision in his mind. I'm all in with this country. I still think there are certain things that are worth losing everything over, and there's certain things worth dying over. Losing your life over. I still believe in my heart, I cannot confirm this. I heard that one interview when he talked about his son that transitioned over and that he bought into it and they lied to him. This is in the same ideological sphere world that he's just, I mean, just so militantly against.
FYI, his son is having second thoughts now.
About what?
About what happened to him. He said
Well,
he was...
sure he did.
Yeah,
Yes.
We're wrapping it up?
Yeah.
Come
Well,
on.
what's it? See, you always screw things up. No, but we'll talk about this on the after show. There's something else going on with this guy because he's risking it all.
The richest guy in the world doesn't care about money.
He's not going to be the richest guy in the world if this keeps going.
Right.
Look, guys, thanks for joining us. We're gonna talk for another 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes on the after show. Please join in. Thank you for joining in every week. Please share this with someone you think may benefit from it. Have a very blessed weekend. Bye-bye.
The preceding show was paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily represent those of WOAI and iHeartMedia.
This is News Radio 1200 WOAI San Antonio. Live everywhere with the iHeart.
Okay. I can't remember who
Say it
it
one more time.
was. It wasn't Sid, but somebody. Oh, Ruthie, I think said. Before we go on, can y'all talk about the JFK files? Were there any? Well, I wonder.
I didn't go through them yet.
But it's like it was 1,100 pages. What is it anyway? What does it say? Nobody said anything.
I mean, I don't trust what's in those things either. I mean, look,
What the?
I am not a scholar on it, but I've done enough research on it. My opinion, and and Bill O'Reilly has his opinion. I completely
Who was a
disagree
single
with Bill
bullet?
O'Reilly.
You or
Huh?
George? Who was a single bullet? You or George?
I don't believe in that. I don't
Oh, you
believe
were
in
single
No.
bullet.
I don't believe Oswald.
I thought it was
did.
one gunman.
I don't believe that.
Oh,
Oh hell no.
wasn't it you, George? Or
If you look at wound
No,
path,
I-
if you look
I-
at
I
wound
don't-
path
I don't-
analysis and the single bullet theory is how could one bullet? Because they found first of
Yeah.
all the bullet would have been destroyed. It wouldn't have been in pristine. I mean, when you look at ballistics and what a bullet does and what happens
skull.
to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and then look at the trajectory when you look at wound path analysis.
Yes.
There's other experts. I mean, Kennedy's head went back and to the left, back and. So you have to look at, and people try to argue that's from a rear shot. That's not from a rear shot. There's no way that's from a. Just look
No.
at any ballistics and talk to any experts. So Bill O'Reilly's off his rocker on this one. And then you listen to the witnesses and where they said they heard shooting and the grassy knoll and this and how people reacted in the moment to the grassy knoll. They were reacting to what they heard, not from the book suppository. Or what is it? Repository, suppository?
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
Texas school book.
It's suppository.
it.
Some people need a suppository. But all I'm saying is it's just, to me it's clear now whether there was somebody, they say there was people in the manhole and there was multiple shooters and then did you see that video I sent you guys? Has that been doctored? About the driver turning around?
I saw it, and
it looks
looks
weird.
so real.
I've never seen it before.
No, me
and
neither.
I've seen the Zapruder film. I mean, dozens of times. I've never looked at the driver.
You're not
Have
looking
you
at the
seen that,
driver.
George?
You would never
I
even
saw it, but
know.
I've never noticed it
I've
before.
You would
never
never
noticed
be
it.
looking at the driver.
Let me
those.
give the audience
Yes.
what I'm talking about. Then George can comment because I've been talking too long. But so you look at the Zapruder film and you see that President Kennedy has been shot through the back and through his neck. So he comes over, he hunches over, and he's grabbing at his throat. Jackie starts looking at him. You have the governor looking back, and people are saying that he had been shot too. That's the trajectory of that bullet had hit him, and he's trying to look around, and he's turning to see what's going on behind him. He looks to his right, not to his left, which is interesting to me. And then,
Oh, that's right. That is weird.
you know what I mean? And then you see the driver, right? I mean, literally simultaneously when the president's head explodes, because then it's an explosion. I mean, his head just explodes
Yeah.
and it goes back into the left, which is why it supports the grassy knoll angle. You see the driver reach over with his left hand, and you see like a poof, as if he had a special quote unquote CIA gun, and that he was the one that shot I mean, it is crazy. I've never seen it before.
5 years ago, I showed it to my parents.
You saw it back then?
5 years ago.
It's always been there. You're saying, Salvo?
Yeah, 5 years ago,
Oh,
I saw
never
the
saw it.
video. I was with my parents. They have a big screen TV, and I just paused it. I told my dad, "Dad, look at this guy," because he's driving, and then the guy in the second one, he goes, he just moves, and he just turns around and shoots him, and that's where you see him like that.
That video
And
is
the first thing I told my dad, the way they did it is that the first gunshot, everybody's gonna go down and hide, and then distract, and then the second one came. But that was 5 years ago when I saw that
That's
video.
amazing. I've never seen it, Salo. Because I've always been laser focused on Kennedy's head
Exactly.
Yes,
and Jackie
yes.
and the Secret Service member trying to run up to them, and I'm looking at Connolly and the way he was turning. So I'm looking at that angle. I was never looking at the driver.
No.
And if you're saying it's always been there, it's great. It's something
Because I
that
remember he was going like this.
Yep.
He was going like this, and then you just see his head like
he
that.
shoots back. Yeah. So George, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean,
What book have you read on this?
Vincent Bugliosi.
I knew it.
No,
I knew it.
No, actually, I pulled it up because I love Vincent Bugliosi. He's a former federal prosecutor and a great author of all kinds of really cool books. He prosecuted the Charlie Manson
Yeah. Yes.
trials. Not that you were there and you remember.
No,
Karen.
but I
know
read
looking at you like
his book.
in 1969. And he did a brilliant job there, and I think he made a compelling case for the circumstantial guilt of O.J. Simpson. I mean, the guy's been phenomenal, and a hell of a lawyer, and a great writer. However, he wrote a book in 2007, and I just completely, as you would disagree with him, called "Reclaiming History: The Assassination of President John F. Kennedy," and he, he believes in the single bullet.
Wow.
Absurdity.
What does he argue? How? Does he talk about wound path analysis?
It's the same. Come on,
tool and firearms analysis. I mean, did they match that bullet with a barrel?
It's the
because
same
they have
stuff,
the barrel
the
of
notion
Oswald.
that somehow twisting and turning, and that, on the part of the people that were hit, it was John Connally and it was John F. Kennedy and so people moving.
But you have to still be in a position. You have to look at the angle when you do wound path analysis. You see where the barrel is and the trajectory of the bullet and how it would have ballistically gone, and then how it would enter. And yes, when you're twisting and turning,
correct,
you'll have different injuries, but you can get rods. And they can do it with computers now,
yes,
and you can line up the trajectory of the bullet.
To see that it's inconceivable that could have happened. Well, he argues the opposite, and I think he takes the position of the Warren Commission, and he's actually rather rough on conspiracy theorists. But if you
does he address the grassy knoll? And all the witnesses? You can't ignore witnesses and what they say and what they heard.
He does. And my understanding is that he discredits the notion that there was an additional shooter in the grassy knoll. So weird. And so, but anyway, that book
is like.
You asked me what book that I. That's a book I read that I did not disagree with. I'm going back 2007 now, so it's been 18 years. And Bugliosi, I don't think is any with us any longer, but. He'd be a great guy to kind of push back on because he can handle himself.
Hey, right before everything comes out, do you think a plane hit the Pentagon on 9/11?
I don't know.
Again, that wasn't a plane.
I don't know.
That something else is going to come out. Just watch.
There wasn't a plane.
I don't know.
I don't think.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
because that's one of the planes apparently that was lost.
Planes?
Eh?
Did they find a plane?
No.
Did they find evidence of a plane?
No, but the argument was that the plane in 9/11, one of the planes hit the Pentagon.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a separate plane.
Yeah.
Are there people missing from a flight? That
of course it hit the Pentagon.
What? It did? You think? You think it was a plane?
Talk to me.
I don't think it was a plane.
Was it Biden's balloon? Of course it was a plane. What do you think it was?
You think
that's
it was a plane?
easy to figure out. I mean, all you do is you see the plane that
it was a rocket. It was something else.
Hold on, but Salo, this is me. If I was prosecuting that case, I would say, okay, you're saying it was a plane. When did it take off? From where? Where was its coordinates? Because it's going to flight. Who was on that plane? And is the plane missing? Did it land anywhere? Did it not land? If it didn't land, then where's that plane and where are those people that were on that plane? So that's my.
But depending on I can imagine all the cameras around, and they only have 2 videos for that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there should be more videos.
There were weird, suspicious things in that situation.
No, anyway, I'll just say before they release more.
Flight 77, 64 people dead. The collision was apparent and obvious. So I don't know
apparent and obvious.
It was obvious. So you think they doctored the footage?
We'll see the video after the program.
All right.
Lord.
But
please
conduct. You look at Jack Ruby. Does he talk about Jack Ruby? I mean, Jack Ruby was a mob dude, man. He was a mob representative out of Dallas. He had connections to Carlos Marcello. Why the hell would Jack Ruby give a shit if the mob hated Kennedy? There's wiretaps of them talking about how the Kennedys, how Joe Kennedy backstabbed them because they helped get John elected through the unions, and they controlled the unions without any resistance back then. And then of course they hated Bobby Kennedy, and so I'm just saying that you got to explore that too. I mean, and yes, I get it. Oswald was a weird dude. I'm not saying he wasn't violent. I'm not saying he didn't shoot the cop at the movie theater. I'm not saying, because 2 things can be true at the same time. I'm not saying that he wasn't in the building because the people see him running down the stairs. Because but you can tell. I mean, did they do GSR on him? Gunshot residue analysis. You check because you have ballistics. I mean, could they tell if that gun was shot? You look at that rifle. They've conveniently found the rifle. We'll do the ballistics on the rifle. I mean, there's all kinds of stories about the president's brain and doing the surgery and all that shit. I mean, for anyone to say, yes, it was Oswald and a single bullet theory, which is insane to me. It's not an impossible shot, but the ballistics make it impossible. It's not that the shot is impossible. I mean, he was driving around like in a turkey shoot. I mean, he was open. I mean, the way they were turning back and forth, the Secret Service would have never approved that route. Today, for sure. But even back then, they had Secret Service. So there's just a lot of questions I would have.
I want to refer people to a piece that I haven't read yet because it's been on my list because I didn't think we were going to talk about this. And frankly, I'm kind of JFK conspiracied out. But anyway, I do think it's a good piece because I like her work. Victoria Taft from pjmedia.com. She wrote a piece called "The JFK Conspiracy Theorists Are Right Again While the MSM is Duped." And she says, here we are 61 years later, and the JFK conspiracy theorists are still largely right. about John F. Kennedy's assassination, and the media are still woefully wrong. And what she talks about is how we have additional evidence through this latest batch release that, in fact, the CIA played a more critical role that conspiracy theorists have thought all along, and that it should be given much more credence. And she highlights a bunch of instances where the MSNBC came out and discredited conspiracy theorists, but have now been found.
I don't think anyone can objectively believe that Oswald did it by himself. No one has satisfied my questions if I was going to make a legal determination, whether I was going to prosecute a case or defend it, and all the stuff that I would want to know to put a case together in prosecution or defense. No one that supports a single shooter theory has satisfied any of the questions that I would have. But who the hell am I? So that's that.
Yeah. So anyway, read that piece. I think you guys will find it enlightening. She's got tons of links, and I can't wait to read it myself. But anyway.
What are we talking
Please
about?
conduct.
Well, I just was reading a news flash that came over that Trump just revoked the security clearance for Biden, Clinton, and Harris.
Okay.
So
what's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, that kind of move says, okay, they still have their fingers in everything.
Who does?
Biden, Harris, Clinton.
Well, let me ask a question, and maybe you have the answer.
I don't.
Okay, well, then maybe George has the answer. Maybe Salo has the answer. Maybe somebody has the answer.
What?
Is that normal? Do they revoke national security clearances from former presidents?
I don't think they do.
I mean, does Bush have national security clearance? Does Clinton still?
I thought they did.
It's not normal. It doesn't.
They keep it. They keep it.
They usually keep it.
As well as the 51 intelligence officials.
Don't they even get briefings
which had their
on
national
what's going on usually?
They should have gotten theirs.
I think the calculus here is what value are they bringing to this? Exactly. I mean, what's the point? And I think he's trying to do enough sensitive operations where he doesn't want them in the hands of people that he frankly doesn't trust.
Oh, I have no issue with it. I'm just asking.
No, but that's the rationale. But no, I don't. Not that I know of. No, I don't think this is a.
Was Trump's national security clearance pulled from him?
Yes. Right.
It was.
It was when he was out.
There you go. Careful
but
the world you help
it's
create.
typically not something that they do.
Again, what's normalcy in the age of Trump?
I know.
I mean, throw that out the window. But pre-Trump, no. I mean, it was business as usual, and former presidents retained their security clearances. The former heads of the CIA, former heads of the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. But now, in the age of Trump, anything's possible.
Did you feel sad when they took away the security from Hunter Biden while he was on vacation in South Africa?
Yeah, I think Hunter Biden's an interesting individual. I don't feel bad about anything about Hunter Biden. I don't wish harm on him, but I do want accountability from Fauci, from Biden's. I want from anybody, from a Republican. I don't give a shit who it is. I mean, accountability is accountability is accountability, and I believe in principles. I want to pursue truth. Excuse me. I want to make sure that things are exposed. If we want to fix this government and this administrative state and the deep state and all the other crap that we know is very true now, and we want this government to run efficient long past Trump, and even if a Democrat's in office, then we need to stick to the principles of our founding fathers and try to set up a due process in every aspect of our government that will long outlast whatever party's in office. And that's why I think we need to address the Supreme Court, lifetime appointments, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's tough. I mean, think about lifetime appointments. That's a tough gig, man, for me. And I don't know where George, have you ever researched or looked at where that came from? I haven't. I wish I had asked Patrick that. I didn't ask Patrick that this week when we usually do our talks. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know. This afternoon will be an enlightening moment for me because I really want to study Saving Nine, and I think, and again, he does a great job going through the history, and frankly,
but he doesn't talk about the lifetime. Where does that come from?
He talks about the genesis of it. You know, how long has it been lifetime? And then he does that. He juxtaposes that with the attacks on the court in an effort to pack it.
Well, think about it. If it was a 20-year appointment, Roberts would be up for reappointment right now. See, or review. Exactly. And that's 20 years is still a hell of a long time. Is 15 years more appropriate? I mean, a 15-year gig is a hell of a gig. A 15-year gig is that appropriate? A federal magistrate is not a lifetime appointment, but it's a hell of a long appointment. I think it's 20 years. If somebody knows, please post it. I'm not sure, but I think it's 20 years. but it's not lifetime like a federal judge. And all I'm saying is, what is that what we want? Is that serving our system better? That we have lifetime appointments versus maybe just a substantial appointment.
For guys listening, I can't do it now, but check me out on this. But all I know is that it's in Article 3 of the Constitution. It's in there.
Well, it is
the concept of a lifetime appointment.
But then why not any other position? Why a life? I'm just curious because like just think of U.S. attorneys. So U.S. attorneys for the different districts, there's 94 of them in the country roughly, and they're presidential appointments. So and the U.S. Marshals, the marshals in every area are presidential appointments, just like cabinet members. Yeah. And so it's a relatively short gig, 4 to 8 years, you would assume. I guess if the same party wins again, they could just leave them in there. So I guess theoretically it could be a longer gig, but there's a review process, and it's not perpetual, and that's all.
Man, we could fill it out. This is a fascinating discussion because I think those are the two arguments. Even though Article 3. It's inferred from Article 3 that that
it's not explicit.
But the reason for that is because they look up the language on this. They are allowed to hold their offices during good behavior.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, exactly. So it's inferred. Good behavior. You can have good behavior for your entire life. So it's inferred. The lifetime appointment is inferred from that language, but it's hardly a definitive argument in the Constitution for it. So this argument that this issue that you're bringing up is not new. It is important to have. And I think there's been other questions just about cognitive impairment. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and as they get up in years, you were talking about, thank God they're not demonstrating that, but Alito and Thomas, and we ought to really think about replacing them with younger,
I said that before.
I said conservative legal minds. Fair enough. Yeah, but that's a legitimate concern
Online,
too.
Richard says in the 1700s, what was a lifetime appointment? Like, what was the lifetime?
No, that's a good point. Yeah. No, think about it. They didn't live until their 70s and 80s. How long was Scalia on the court before he passed?
Who?
Scalia.
Oh my goodness. 3 decades, right?
Was he?
Antonin Scalia was on there for.
And
who was? It was Ronald Reagan that appointed him, right?
Yeah, until they typed up his resignation to hand in.
Yeah. So, check me out on that.
I don't want to change the subject again, but I am because I'm being all crazy. I know. But I want to just ask about the DocuSign, the Biden fake, like automatic signature thing, and how everybody's talking about now how most of his stuff was signed by that. How many?
Can I press pause on that for just a quick second?
Please.
Antonin Scalia was appointed under Ronald Reagan, and he was a justice for 30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
So long.
So 86 to 16. So, the auto pen stuff.
Wow.
Can they really?
It's a long time, man.
Do anything about those? The auto signature? Can they get the pardons? Can they get rid of them?
I don't know. It's going to go up for judicial review. There you go. Go take it up to the umpires, man. I don't know.
It's worth having the conversation.
It is because here's the concern. I don't have a problem with an auto signature if you can show that it was at the proxy of the president.
Right.
Yes.
Because there's, I have concern. I think everybody does now that Biden had the mental faculties to sign anything or to know what the hell he was signing. You hear stories that people say, "Hey, President Biden, you did this." No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. See, conversations like that have been, to me, substantiated by, was that Robert? What was that special counsel that said the only reason why they didn't prosecute him is because he's an old man that nobody would want to prosecute?
Yes.
What's his name? Robert what?
I can't remember.
Robert, somebody say it.
Robert Hur.
Hur, there you go. I was going to say but Hur. Okay, Robert Hur. Just think about those type of reports. And that's an official investigation that was making a prosecutorial decision and said, yeah, we could prosecute him. He committed crimes, but he's an old dude that doesn't have his mind all together, doesn't have all his mental faculties. People were calling for Biden's resignation to step down at that moment, which is a legitimate argument. If you're talking about the 25th Amendment, they wanted to apply that to Trump.
Even Mike Johnson had mentioned some things that he was talking to him about, about things he signed.
I saw that.
And Mike Johnson said he didn't really know what he signed.
Yep.
That's what he said.
Well, those are legitimate. You should explore that. That's all I'm saying.
Because of that, I would allow that investigation.
And the pardon was signed
it should be investigated.
for Fauci while Biden was somewhere like on an island or something. Like he wasn't even in Washington when that happened.
I think Fauci potentially committed criminal behavior. I do. I think Fauci should be investigated. I think look, what happened during COVID was horrific. through the Department of Education, our children have not rebounded from that. There were. And what do you say to the family that your kid committed suicide?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, do over. We really didn't know, or mandated this shot, and that there was horrible side effects from that, or they lost their job, or they weren't there for a wedding, or they weren't there for a baby being born, or they weren't there for a death. I mean, you can't get those moments back. Now, that's not criminal, that's moral. I get that. And those portions of it, just if you miss something like that. But I think there was a lot of double dealing. There was a lot of, it seems like, money ties, quid pro quo.
Is it criminal for him to be a leader of the United States, right? And he said, Fauci, and he says this. He says this, you will not get infected. You're safe if you get the vaccine. Because he said that several times.
Well, and it depends. I know that's not an answer.
He said you will not get infected and you're safe.
But it caused deaths.
Well, did he know that? Was it reckless? When you look at criminal negligent homicide in the state court, you look at negligence, criminal negligence.
For a fact.
George knows a lot of things. So George is not the standard.
Well, even George is the book.
If George is the science, George is the science.
So George, you're not up to Fauci.
I mean,
that's horrible.
Even George.
I wish I could take credit for that genius, but this is basic immunology. It's basic immunology. I mean, truly, that vaccines, that a definition of vaccines is theoretically that it would stop the spread because it would take away the infectious power of the pathogen because it's inoculating against it. And then they changed the definition of vaccine, remember?
Yes, okay. I know.
To accommodate the piece of shit that was the mRNA platform that COVID was launched on. So, and Fauci knew all of this. He knew that. And do you remember when this all started in March of 2020, where he literally changed everything that he said from March to May?
Who?
Fauci.
Yes,
on 60 Minutes, laughing at people who were wearing masks.
Yes.
Basically saying, look, it's kind of a psychological treatment. It'll make you feel better and all. But this ain't going to work. That's not going to work.
And then
and
the
that was
stickers
accurate.
on the floor.
And then,
yes.
and then a month later, he's got
like,
3 masks on. Outside, like a dumb dick.
They're talking about layers.
At a baseball
right?
game.
They're layering masks.
Stupid.
I mean,
my God.
He knew. So this was a political decision, and he dressed it up.
But did he know
as a
people
clinical one?
Did he know people were going to be injured? That's the question. Or was it foreseeable? So was it a conscious disregard, or should he have known? Which is, I got to look at the federal statutes. If there's a federal statute that emulates or mimics the state statute, whether it was reckless or criminal negligence, I mean, it matters whether he knew or should have known. I mean, that would be my questions on whether there's a federal statute that follows that.
Right, but he had, and if he, I mean, regardless of how you feel about VAERS,
Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System.
Regardless of how you feel about that,
I feel good about it.
And there are issues with the system, but only because of underreporting.
Well, so people, just to bring them back up to speed, VAERS is the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. It's a branch of the CDC, right? And it's a self-reporting system. And there was a study done in 2010 by some group out of Harvard. It wasn't from Harvard, but it was a group out of Harvard, something to do with Pilgrim something group. And they said that these...
The Ross study.
Yeah. The VAERS, the Adverse Events Reporting System, the Vaccine Adverse, is only the 1% self-reporting. Karen.
Right.
So when we looked at the numbers back then, remember all the numbers we kept looking at? Because there was reporting on vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine. And it said, okay, if that's 1%, do the math, it should be alarming. And if you look at what other drugs and what harm they did and what it took to get them off the market, it was, minuscule compared to that. I mean, if there's 5 deaths, it's like, that's too many, which is true. And they'd pull a drug off the market after a drug had done a double-blind placebo study and gone through all 4 phases. This didn't do any of that shit. And so, it was just a joke. And so, Salo, I would look into all of that stuff before, but it needs to be looked into because there's families that have been devastated from this stuff. Devastated. And look, and when I look at motive for a living, when I used to prosecute and if I defend, you look at motive for a living, and CNN reported this, okay? So all the naysayers out there, Alamo Talk and Mark Antoine, you can look at this up. CNN reported this. That in 10 months on one product.
It makes me sick for what you're about to say.
10 months on one product, the pharma industry saw 9 new billionaires with a B. Billionaires. And you're going to tell me that's not part of the equation? Then I'll sell you some oceanfront property in Arizona.
So you can't touch pharma doctors, right? Can you do a class action suit against the media? Because for example, let's say the vaccine. But then they started saying, you can't use this type of medicine. Don't do this. Don't do that. Something that could have saved somebody. Ivermectin or the other medicines that people were talking about. And then the media,
Hydroxychloroquine.
they started reporting that this was wrong. Is there anything there?
I don't know, Dad. I mean, you got to look at the statute. You got to look at the legislative intent. You got to look at what exactly they knew and didn't know, or whether they were told, and whether they were willfully blind, or intentionally blind. Was it intentional, knowingly, recklessly, criminal negligence? I mean, there's so much analysis that needs to go into something like that. But it's true. I mean, when you saw the lock, stop, and barrel, have you seen the collage of videos when all the national media when they start with one and they're just literally repeating the same. They're reading the same teleprompter, and then there's 2, and there's 10, and then there's 20, and there's 50, and then you go and then you hear all the voices. It's really pretty persuasive. Everybody was just.
That's why I'm always asking, who are those 3 people that are deciding? This is what we're going to say tomorrow.
That's a great question.
I don't know. Because I don't know. I don't think it's the government.
It's not Schumer.
It's not here because it's worldwide.
Patty Kay said, remember the Howdy Doody show Nuremberg and Nelson Wolf used to have after 5 p.m. every day on the stats of COVID patients in Bexar County.
I mean, can you imagine? If I always tell people, I tell my wife and George, I've talked to George about this. If I was DA during that time, I would have been right in the middle of all that bullshit. And on the opposite side of them,
I know.
Who knows what would have happened?
That would have been crazy.
It would have been crazy. It would have been a Royal Rumble.
God saved them from that.
I don't know. It would have been crazy. Time. And with all due respect, humbly, I would have been right, and they would have been wrong. But a lot of them are wrong. And then you look at the media, and you look at the late night, and all those shills and all those dumb dicks out there. They were just repeating and trying to make you feel terrible about it. But look, Fox is not that guy. Kudo, what's that guy that they let go? I'm glad they let his ass go. What was his name? What was that? Cavuto. They let that prick go, and he was the same thing, trying to shame people into doing it versus letting people think freely as you're supposed to be as a quote unquote conservative. So look, there's blame on both sides.
Recently, the New York Times came out like they had a light bulb moment that in fact the virus did not have a zoonotic origin, and that it was very likely released from the Wuhan Institute of Technology, Institute of Virology. Like this was new. I mean, we were
That's so funny.
We were talking about that on this show at the time, that there was plenty of evidence to suggest that this was actually contrived in a laboratory and it was released. Now, I went a step further and said I doubt very much this was done accidentally, but it was at least done accidentally, perhaps deliberately, and I would argue deliberately, because it was a pretty effective biological weapon.
Well, Fauci for sure lied to Congress.
Yes.
He absolutely did.
100%.
This idea of just on a gain of function.
Yes.
Right. Just on a gain of function. The idea of a viral genome being appropriated with additionally aggressively pathogenic qualities relative to its native state.
Yes.
So, and he lied about that. He knew he had arrangements with Peter Daszak at Echo Health Alliance, which is a third party. And this is why he was able to hide behind it. He wasn't directly doing it, but they were paying Echo Health Alliance via grants. And Echo Health Alliance was working with Wuhan Institute of Virology to do this kind of research. And this has been going on. And man, I knew, and again, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I knew at the time that there had been a long and sordid history of this Wuhan Institute of Virology, that they had other issues before, that other viruses had been released into the community and had spread beyond borders. We knew that. It had a history of that. The State Department had released those kinds of news stories over the years. And yet for the New York Times and others to call people racist because they assumed because it happened to be China, you're racist against the Chinese. I mean, I got lots of problems with Chinese, but it's because they're racist. So
that was so
people were maligned.
Yeah, I know.
And Fauci was at the front making people feel like idiots.
I mean,
when 6 months before he was saying
division
exactly what
in
everybody else was
families.
saying.
I mean, people didn't even go to Christmas meals, funerals, and there was hate. I mean, and I don't know if there's been any repentance or reconciliation in families. I hope so. I mean, you lost friends over this shit. I mean, it was all a lie.
Nico, I streamed 6 funerals. I streamed 6 funerals, and nobody was there.
I know.
It was just the person and one other person. And it had to be on the other side. It's very sad.
And here's what I'm worried about.
And don't get me started on measles.
I'm worried. I'm worried that so much damage was done that when there's a legitimate issue, we can't have a conversation about it anymore.
Right.
And I think that's happening right now with the bird flu.
Yes.
Because I actually happen to believe. I'm not concerned about the measles in the slightest bit. It is the greatest of non-issues. What I am worried about is the bird flu. I am.
Interesting. Wow.
And I'm more worried about it now than I was before because we haven't been given proper attention about it. Because if you start saying, "Hey, there could be an issue here," are you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever,
and what it's like about the bird flu about.
Oh, well, I'm legitimately concerned because there have been more and more papers that have been released to talk about how You actually have a more refined mechanism to that the virus is for going from animal to human. I'm concerned about that. I mean, in mammalian species, it's showing that it's very robust.
Don't eat chicken. That's what you're saying.
No, it's not that simple.
Don't
I mean,
kiss chickens.
Don't sleep with chickens.
Don't sleep with chickens.
Whoa.
I'm so glad you said that.
What, you were going to tonight or what?
Don't sleep with a chicken. That's why eggs are coming down.
Where does it come from? Where does this blue bird flu come from then?
Well, I mean,
I've never heard of the bird flu.
The origins of it. I think there were flocks of birds, migrating birds that had been infected, and
migrating from Wuhan.
But of course, I mean, they end up on farms and they end up contaminating poultry, and it's bird flu for a reason. It's pervasive inside avian species. Birds in general, but migratory birds. This is where it was originally started. If you look at the origins of the story, and then they find their ways into other poultry populations in the food chain.
What is it? I mean,
what are the symptoms?
Hey, look at the lawyer.
No,
over
I mean
here.
it's
what type of bird? Where was he? Where was he last night?
We hate ducks.
And at some point, we had to carve out time to talk about it meaningfully. But it is a legit problem. It is a legitimate strain, and
but what does it do to you?
What does it do to you?
I mean, it's not. I mean, what is it?
Is it like
a flu?
COVID?
Is it a different flu? It's a different strain of the flu.
Influenza-like properties on steroids.
Okay.
Ooh.
On steroids. Yeah. I mean, and so what I'm worried about is that there's more and more evidence to suggest that the virus has adapted well to jumping from poultry populations from animals to human. I'm concerned about that, and because obviously humans are mammals, and now it's not just inside.
But don't wear masks. Don't wear masks.
And so I'm worried about being able to have a conversation about that leads to meaningful policy, but we can't because you're worried about giving the government a footstool to be able to issue draconian policies that steal individual liberties, like it was used during the age of COVID. Now, thank God that we have an administration that I think we can honestly say we trust with this relative to the Biden administration, but I'm worried about what it's done to science. Because the science under Fauci did so much to corrupt how we think scientifically and clinically. So anyway, we ought to be watching that. I think that is a legitimate issue. I do. I do think the USDA went absolutely apeshit when it didn't need to, wiping out 100 million birds when they should have been testing and wiping out the ones that are infected.
That's why those birds were killed back then.
Correct. So I got lots of criticisms there, but I do think this is a legitimate conversation we ought to have at some point, Nico, and that's getting no traction whatsoever.
Well, it should get traction. And also, I guess, in as we wrap up, when you talk about how the standards we set, I mean, we've talked about the prosecution of people at abortion clinics to parents at school board meetings, but also even, like Steve Bannon is a little too much for me at times, Sometimes. But I like Peter Navarro, but their prosecution doesn't seem consistent with what people under Obama had done. And all I'm saying is when the justice system gets to a point where a lady justice picks up the blindfold and says, who's in front of me? Oh, well, I'll apply the law and the facts differently to you than I will to this person. That's when I've been advocating this, Karen, for years, and you know that. That's where we have to preserve the justice system. And that's why when it comes to the Aliens Act and all that stuff and due process and judges, I want a system that will sustain any administration. Because no matter what the people are doing from administration to administration and who's in power, the saving grace, the save all is the justice system to me. And it's the power of the people, because ultimately it's a jury of your peers that takes the power away from the government. And Thomas Jefferson has a great quote on that about holding the government, keeping it in check, restraining the government to make sure it holds itself to the issues and the principles of the Constitution. And that's always been my advocacy, and so we should do that. So, guys, what's up?
I was going to quote Jefferson.
Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Which one?
In correspondence to William Jarvis in 1820, he said the following, and it may be pertinent to the discussion we're having today. Quote, "You seem to consider the judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions. A very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. Our judges are as honest as other men, and not more so. And their power is the more dangerous as they are in office for life and not responsible, as the other functionaries are, to the elective control." The Constitution has elected no such single tribunal, knowing that to whatever hands confided, with corruptions of time and party, its members would become despots. End of quote.
Man. He's got a great quote about juries that we use in jury selecting voir dire. We use that because we want to make sure that juries understand that you are serving a role, a tremendous function, as important as any other function in our society, in our government. And so I love it. Send me that quote when you get a chance. But guys, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. And please share this, like we always say. Share this. Make comments. We do our best to go back and look at comments and respond back if we can. Have a blessed weekend. Enjoy your families. Bye-bye.